This is the part when you have everything apart in the trunk area. So this is basic idea as far as what needs to be removed as far as interior panels to get access to the fuse block there, and then access to the actual roof control assembly. This is where we're going to be tapping into the wires here. I believe that's your GPS navigation DVD insert part, and this is just a bunch of fuses and such. If you look at this cap that was covered up in such matter here, when you pop and slide open that little cover, that prevents hardtop from opening or closing if you don't have it put in here with the switch on here. So anyways, so this is just a broad view of how things need to be taken apart. Now I'm taking the right panel off as well because I'm trying to get access to the power antenna to replace it because my mast is busted up. So we'll get that taken care of as well. Have that part already on order. Hey, welcome to the channel. This video is about installing a rear camera on a Pioneer head unit that I already have also taken apart here. As far as interior, there's a lot of videos online as far as how to take apart the interior of SC. You usually start with taking the climate control. You just pry it up. It's on these 4 clips. There's 2 right here, and there's 2 more. Let's see, I'm talking about these guys here. They just pop in and out of these openings right here. In my case, I bought the vehicle already with the Pioneer unit in place, and mine is the Pioneer. I believe it's AV. I'm gonna say it's AVX. Oh, let's get it here. It's AVH 2500 NEX. It's a DVD player slash CarPlay, all this stuff. These pop out fairly simple if you need to run any kind of stuff here. I was just doing general cleanup here because of the previous owner's coffee spillage or whatever it might have been here. So you pop the seat heater switch assembly, and then you pop this part up with that, just connecting a couple of plugs here and there. Nothing major. Now to get done the right way, you remove the rear seat. It's easier done with the top down first to remove all this stuff. I might have to remove the back seat as well to get easier access to route the wiring in here. But also what we're doing today is we are installing this tricky device. And this is more or less probably the video about this more than about the rear camera. Now I did acquire 2 more extras. They are for sale. I'm selling them for $200 each. Probably $250 included shipping. So we'll put a $250 included shipping. So these come from a gentleman in Russia. These modules here, looks like a 3D printed enclosure, but this is how the part looks. So you have to assemble it with a few trigger wires. This has to go to the front driver's door, and this has to go, I believe, to ignition, then hot all the time, and the ground. I'm not sure why he color coded the way he did, but some of them are inputs, some of them are outputs. You get this kind of graph, but it's in Russian, which is not very hard to read through as far as understanding what goes where. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to do my best to actually get this in English. And I believe he actually offers one in English as well. But you have to slice the rear quarter window wiring. We have to be splicing. Basically, you'll cut the wiring, and then you connect the side that goes to the actual controller. So we're talking about the computer that controls the rear windows. That side has to connect on one side, and the other side that goes to the motor controller. I mean, if you know or are aware of a little bit of electronics, you will understand how this all takes place. And stay tuned on the video, and we will explain how this all to take place. To install the backup camera, I found it easy to simply remove these license plate lights, and then you can pry in here, remove some of the bumper backing foam, drill a hole through here. You can insert the camera like I did, Or if you're doing one that's a license plate mount, you can do that as well. Obviously, in my case, I'm just using this one here. So I drilled a hole, put the wire through, and then once you have this compartment open, you will see that there's a factory wiring goes. I believe this is for the license plate lights. So they just drilled a hole here. So we do the same thing. We drill a hole, use a rubber grommet, make it snug and tight so the wires don't lose the water through. And then this is how we're gonna run our wiring for the camera, which is gonna go factory route along with all the harness into interior between the seats into the camera port, basically backup camera port in the radio in the head unit. All right, so we're talking about these quarter windows here to be able to control them with a lock unlock switch here by pressing it necessary amount of times, which I believe 2 to drop the windows, and 3 times consecutively. So basically 1, 2, 3 like this. You click 3 times, windows will roll down. If you press 2 times, windows will roll up, or it's vice versa, one or the other. The whole goal, the point of it is that to be able to control these windows separately, as Lexus did not provide any switch for that. I mean, it's not very necessary, you could say, yes, true, but in a certain sense, for example, when you're riding with the top down and you want to have all windows closed up to prevent any of the draft to the back or whatever, basically you're able to control those windows, or if you want to control them for any other purpose, whatever it is. So honestly, that was the first thing that when I bought the vehicle, I thought was like, man, why didn't they put that in there? I mean, yeah, it's kind of a little nuisance maybe, but I think it would have been a cool feature to have at least, you know, something just like a couple of smaller buttons. I mean, they could have added it in there if you think about it, right? But in any case, so we have now opportunity to be able to do that. So to control those windows, you're going to be using a lock unlock button here, and I'm going to go over the instructions here. So considering that I'm of a Russian descent, I can understand and read Russian, so I'm going to do my best to translate and explain, I guess, what takes place. And I'm not going to go into all the other technical details. I'm just going to go over the basics, and I believe that if you were to buy this controller here, you can use ChatGPT to translate this file for you to give you a better idea as far as, you know, if you want to get into all the technical details of what the guy that made this, you know, what he intended for this to be in the way it was meant to be. Anyways, in our case, to raise the windows, you click twice. In 2 seconds, windows will rise. To drop the windows, to lower the windows 3 times, and windows will drop basically immediately by pressing the button here. You can see the arrow here, right? It says press here, boom, boom, right? So that's the function of it. And then this goes into the process of installation. So first, he recommends that we take off the door trim panel from the driver's door, and we need to wire this route. We're gonna route this green wire. We're gonna mount this device somewhere here, and we need to route this green wire through the interior side here. We gotta go through the rubber there and into the door here to that switch area, because we need to connect that to the door lock unlock module controller, which is pretty basic, pretty easy, but it's just a lot of panel removal if you want to look at it that way. If you're doing it the first time and if you're not familiar with this stuff, I mean, if you're familiar with tinker around with the cars, you're gonna find it's fairly, you know, self-explanatory process. Just fishing some wire through the walls there. You know, basically use the route that factory used somewhere. You can run an extra wire, connect it, and or use a fish stick if you're an electrician. You know what I'm talking about then. So anyways, pretty basic. So that's what we're gonna do, and I'm gonna go over the process of how I found it to be done the right way. So next, so we're running the wire through into the door area. We need to remove the components of the door trim panel and bring the wire towards the ECU of the controller for the door lock unlock. So then he says you need to remove this cover here by removing these 2 screws here. So this is the separate unit, keep in mind, this is the one I removed. So he's talking about removing this cover here off the module itself that he has provided. Then we're gonna connect the door unlock green line. Then we're gonna connect the actual controller wires, which are the positive, negative, and the ignition pins here. Let's see that, and then make sure that everything is working, and then we're gonna assemble everything. I mean, he's basically talking step by step, and by no means he says do not use these connectors, because eventually they will break the wires and you're gonna have issues with things working. So what he's suggesting is you connect them by using the metal crimpers. And we're talking about these guys here. If you're familiar with electric connections, you can basically remove the insulation on the wire, strip it down with a little bit of a sharp object option, whatever, utility knife. Use that to crimp it up, and then you tape it up or you heat shrink it if you're able to connect that somehow. Basically you want to prevent that from shorting to anything. But that's how he recommends. Now I do it a little bit differently, and I'll show you down the road, because I just use the connectors. I do quite a bit of 12-volt wiring in my shop, so I'm familiar and pretty confident in my work, I guess you could say. So anyways, at any given point while you're working on anything, he says make sure that you disconnect the ground off the battery, to make sure that there's no wire shortages taking place, because the controller for the hardtop, for the windows and everything, all that has a hot all the time connection. So like, for example, if you look into here, if you're looking to tap for power, this is hot all the time power. And how you check? You take a battery tester, ground. Oh, maybe it's not hot all the time. No, it is hot all the time. There we go. So we got 11.8 on the battery, right? And all these fuses, I believe, are hot as well. So you see the voltage coming through the fuses. So there's power to these fuses at all times. So the whole point is, this is fuse box, and then some of these wires that you're going to be working with, like tapping into I believe the red here, and then we're going to be tapping into one of these white and black lines here on this middle connector, in order to prevent any shortage, obviously, while you're working. Don't do the damage to your vehicle by basically disconnect the battery. First thing you're going to do. We haven't gotten there yet, but we'll get to it. Let's see, next one. So this talks about which connectors, and in this referral he's talking about S21, S20, S19, S18, S17. These are the connectors on this controller here, if you're looking at them in this order. So this is the 21, this is the 20, 19 obviously, 18 and 17. And much understanding of Russian or English I don't think you have to worry about, but you could tell. I mean, if you can read this kind of stuff, you could tell. So the controller will get, you can see that the wires are going from S21, like in this here, wires 8 and 7 coming in for this window here. We're gonna basically cut them right here somewhere, right? Connect them to the controller, and then the other side of those wires gonna get connected to the other side. As you can see, basically this is the only 4 wires that you're actually cutting. Then you got the ground wire, so the red is gonna go to number 2 at 19 here, which is this red one here. The ground is gonna go to number 9 at 19 here, right? And then the pink ignition gonna go into the S18 over here, which is this violet one, I believe, right here with the white line on it, right? And that's pretty much it. And then this part talks about the plug for the lock unlock, for the door unlock module in the door, and that's where we're gonna ground that long green wire in here. Sorry, I'm pointing the wrong way, I guess. So just keep in mind that this is pretty simple. When you look at this, I mean, like, you don't, well, I guess maybe if you don't know electronics or you don't know how to read these diagrams, it might be tough. But generally speaking, if you look it over, it basically says where you know what you cut, what you connect, and what you don't connect, and where you kind of splice in. So pretty basic. So with that all aside, he has a step-by-step process here, basically, to what to do as far as which step-by-step you gotta go through in order to connect this device, and when you connect the battery, disconnect the battery, and so on. So first thing will be is to work with S19 and S18. We're gonna connect the ignition, we're gonna connect the power and ground. So ground, power, ignition. We're gonna do that with battery disconnected under the hood. And then we're gonna get here. He said basically when you turn the ignition on, you should see a diode blinking in the controller, I believe. to make sure that everything is working as it should before you go on to the next step, which would be the connection of the door unlock module in the door panel. So with that said, I'm going to disconnect the battery. I'm going to take the trim off the door, and I'm going to start routing the green wire. Okay, so you're going to open up the hood. You're going to find your ground here. It's a 10 millimeter, and we're going to disconnect that. So that cuts the power to the vehicle. It's probably safe to wait maybe a minute or so to make sure that all the juice gets drained, as they say in the system, right? So more or less in our case, I think we're pretty good here. Next thing you can do is using your battery tester to just make sure you don't have any power anywhere. So we're gonna go here. This is dead connection, dead connection, dead connection, dead connection. So we're good, we're clear to start the rest of the process. So power is draining while we're making sure that there's no kind of a side drainage anywhere else or whatever happening. We're going to start removing the panel. To remove the panel, you're going to remove some of these guys here. Some of these get just kind of ripped out. The clips here, Phillips. This little plastic piece has to come out from the door. You remove something in there, and then I believe we have one screw also in here, and you have to be very careful to remove this guy because it kind of slides out, so without busting the clips in here. So let's get that going. All right, so 1, 2, 3 here, 4 here after you remove this guy, and it's easy to just pry it up from this end. I'm using these plastic removal pieces like this, so you're gonna go in from inside and kind of just play with it and jiggle it a little bit. It'll pop right out. That's how the clip looks from inside. So as you're prying it out open, it will come right off fairly easy. This guy, you pry it from the back. So you have to get in there and you have to press on this clip here. You're gonna press on this clip and this thing will just pop out, and then you slide it forward before you're able to disconnect anything. And what we're going for is an extra Phillips bolt in here that holds this whole thing together as well. Before you start ripping this panel out from the bottom, keep in mind that underneath it is held by 3 more screws. They're kind of right there. These 3 here, they're tucked in under this weather stripping on the door trim here. So don't forget to take them off, otherwise you're gonna be just breaking stuff. So other than that, right now this should just, there you go, see, it just pops open, and all we do is we're just gonna kind of, well, one-hand operation is tough, but you're gonna slide it up this way. I found that it's easier to do with the window down, by the way, so maybe I should have mentioned that in the beginning of the video. And when you do that, keep in mind that you probably want to disconnect this guy already to make it easier. And then once you disconnect this part, you will have the light connector, you will have the speaker connector, and I think you have a couple of links, and as well as electrical connection here for these switches here. So just basic stuff. Make sure you put everything back as you take it apart, keep in mind. Right, I think we're not doing too bad considering this is my first time digging into this vehicle. So in order to run the green wire from the module from the trunk, we're gonna go along this route here, this cable highway through the side of the driver's side quarter panel. We're gonna come in here. For those purposes, prep ahead, move the seat back. You want to remove the bottom trim cover right here. This is my recommended way. Remove that. You're gonna pull this carpeting off. You will need to remove a couple of these clips on the side to access this plastic white cover you will see on the side. That's basically, I think it's the waterproofing transition over to this side here. So in here we have the rubber part that goes in through into the harness of the door in there. So the goal is to fish the wire through that rubber boot in through that wall and in here. So that's the route we're going to be taking. To remove these plastic little tabs right there, let's see if we can zoom in here. These guys here, what I found real easy is if you press with a tool like this and you press on the clip, you will squeeze both of the little side clips, whatever, right? And then you use another screwdriver to pry and pull an actual lid. So that's just a little trick that I used. Maybe it come handy for somebody else. To remove this guy here underneath, you got a bolt that's under the park lever here, and then you're gonna have one bolt that's here, and then one bolt under there, and then you have two screws that hold the hood release, and then you got a bunch of these connectors for switches and lights and whatnot. So keep that in mind. Let's start by removing the rear seat back and see how we can fit the wire in here. Okay, so the best and easiest way that I have found, you're gonna put the controller around here. That's where later we're gonna secure it somewhere here. Leave some slack for the wire on the green, so this way you can put things where you want them a little bit more, right? You have more wire to play with, if anything. But we're gonna back this off a little more. So you're gonna go under this compartment here, and you're gonna go through that firewall over there, whatever you want to call it, the back wall behind the seat. You're gonna go through the opening. In order to do that, all you got to do is loosen up the bottom bolt to relieve the seat, and you have access right there to that part. So this is where the wire is going through right here. That's the new wire, right? I ended up taking the, you see the little yellow pieces there, 1, 2, and 3 up there, to kind of loosen this panel up a little bit. So this way I can get the wire fed through a little bit easier here. So what I did is I insulated the wire with a little bit of electrical tape and brought it in here. You can see right here. So we're about at the door jamb area, the green. The easiest way to fish wire that's thin like this is you take a thicker gauge wire or some sort of a stick or something, it doesn't matter, something you can poke through that rubber bushing there. Just makes fishing the wiring a lot easier. So we use that to get here. Now that we're at this location, we're going to tape the green wire to the red one, pull it that way, and then hopefully, you know, bring it into the door compartment here. To make fishing wire through this rubber boot easier, what you're able to do is you just connect this door stopper, the 10mm bolt right here, so the door opens up a little more, right? And then you can pull on this, boot out, and you can actually disconnect these wires. So when you disconnect the wires, you have access to the boot and all the opening. So it just makes it a lot more accessible. And I find it, for me, it's easier to take things a little bit apart, you know, fish through things, and then tape it back up, basically put it back how it was, instead of trying to, you know, cut in here and work with all this tight space, whatever. So without any further ado, simply just, you know, connect it to the fished wire here, bring it in, boom, boom, it's done, right? Otherwise, you're gonna end up spending basically probably higher amount of time, you know, more time trying to fit it in there rather than working with things that are more opened up. I mean, just like in the concept of, you know, opening up these panels or whatever. I mean, yes, you can just tuck the wires under the panels, kind of, you know, don't do a very diligent job, so to speak. I mean, yes, it all can be done that way. I'm a little more OCD. I prefer things to be looking as factory as possible, you know, to best of my ability. So let's get things in order. Okie dokie. So wire fed through, the boot's back in place through this cavity here. You attach it to this wire here, and you can pull off this plastic and bring the wire in through this opening right to the lead, to the plug where we need to connect to. So next, let's refer to the directions and see what our steps are. We still have the ground disconnected on the battery, and I think next step might be is to splice into this wire. So let's double check. Okay, I guess since we finished fishing the green wire through the, you know, door cavity, door to cabin cavity there, through here, over here, and we are here. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna tidy up the green, make sure here, because basically step 1 1 it says is to connect the ground from the controller to the ground here, which is the S19 connector. And then we're going to connect the 12-volt power, and then we're going to connect the ignition wire. So those are the first 3 steps. Next, we're going to connect the battery, and we're going to check the function of the controller per instructions here, which we should hear double click. So click, 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 click on the controller here with the... Alrighty, ladies and gentlemen, so far we have connected the ground, the power, the ignition, and I also pulled out an extra ignition for myself just in case I needed an ignition trigger for something. So ignore the orange one, that's just for my personal purposes. Might be like a camera trigger power or something like that. But anyways, so at this point, again, this is the S18 connector. You're gonna find a violet with a blue, with a white, sorry, violet with a white. So it's this guy here, the underside of 18. So it's the second plug from the front towards the back, right? If you unplug it, flip it over, you're gonna find this wire here. This right here, a violet with white stripe on it. That's the one we're gonna connect to the ignition, right? Then we're gonna go positive and negative. So our negative, well, we'll start with positive. So the red, we connect to the red here, which is number 2 on the plug, which is the middle plug on the connection. And then the blue goes to our ground, which is underneath. This is if you look in the diagram, so S19 number 9. It's white with black line. It's this guy. So there's 2 white with black lines. He's pointing out to number 9, not number 10, which I'm guessing maybe they're probably the same thing. But anyways, so this one will work. So that's what we do. And now I'm going to show you how I spliced it in. All right, so for the sake of demonstration, imagine that you're splicing this connection, this wire. You need to splice into this yellow one. So imagine the yellow is going to your connector, then the other side is going to your whatever device you're going to be that's running already from factory. I mean, regardless, we're splicing into the wire. So what I do is I cut the 2 in half. Then you make this, right? Then this is the wire we're going to be splicing. So what we do is we take off this connection. You're going to put these 2 together. Give them a little wind like this, right? Next, we're going to insert, so you have to use the proper gauge connector, obviously. So you're going to connect that in like this. We're going to squish it. Boom. Right? If you need to put a heat shrink on here, that's in the case where if you need to do that, this is the time to put a heat shrink. Like if you want to be completely safe, in my case I did that. I put heat shrink over it. It's the one that has a silicone melted coating inside of it, higher quality heat shrink stuff. So once you have this on there, right, we're gonna take the other connection and we're gonna go like this. Now, in all my years of wiring, I have never had this connection fail. Now, considering that you know what you're doing, you can always check it like this. Now, if I rip on it real hard, it's probably gonna come apart, but we're talking about just, yanking on it. Now, right now, as much as I did yank on it, it's holding together fairly well. You wanna make sure that the insulation of your wire is just on the tip here before it enters the tube, so you're not squishing the tube. And if you put that over and heat shrink it, this connection will be as good as new, as good as factory, if you want to call it that way, right? To give you an idea, generally speaking, for example, if you strip the wire down to this way, Imagine how much this thing is going to go, more than halfway into the connector. And if you can look, so I'm gonna, for the sake of demonstration again, what we're gonna do is we're gonna trim this off a little bit so you can see where actual middle connector part is, so this plastic is not in your way. But if you're going like this, you're exposing that much wire before the connector. Now if you play around with it a little bit, there's a little part inside, you can see that little pinch, that's the middle. If you kind of play around with it, it'll come in there, but you always want to be right on the edge, just like that. Now, is this safe? Yeah, probably for the most part, but you still have that metal exposed right there. So electrical tape, heat shrink, whatever works, that's what these guys are for. So when doing it the right way, so for example, if you stripped it way too much, and if you're able to wiggle it in just a little bit to get that in there, sometimes you see the tip right here, so we have about 1/8 of an inch of copper exposed. So that's why you always want to trim just to size. Boom, done, just like that. Here's a little explanatory how to do that. Okay, so with the explanation of how we got that connected, so like I said, I heat shrinked everything. Everything should be good connected. I believe we're in a step where, if you go through the manual again, so we have number 1, ground connected, 1, 2, 12 volt power connected, ignition connected. So 1.4, he says connect battery, ignition off, and then he said basically the controller should not have LED blinking with the ignition off, and then by turning an ignition on, you should hear 4 clicks on the relays, and then the LED should light up for 2 seconds, and then just gonna keep blinking. So it'll light up for 2 seconds solid, and it'll just, you know, keep blinking, whatever. And then he says basically to disconnect the battery and continue on to the step 2 of connecting the actual door lines green wire. So let's try that. All right, I set camera over the controller. Let's see, I'm gonna go turn on the ignition. Okay, I see blinking, so I gotta review the video and see what's going on here. Give it a try again. So we're getting 6 blinks on the diode, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and this is probably has to do with the fact that the unlock button is not connected yet, the green wire. All right, green wire spliced in, connected. If you ask me what's the reason for this, is what I do is on the connectors that are a little bit, you know, made for a bigger gauge, and they do work, but sometimes you want to get them just crimped down nice and snug. So what you do is you put in filler wire. It doesn't hurt anything, it doesn't do anything. You loop around a couple of inches of wire, strip it, insert it along with just one single wire, and when you crimp it, everything gets nice, snug and tight. Nice silicone glued heat shrink. This will hold in place. It will not rust, will not oxidize, and keep things in place. So now I'm gonna use some of this harness tape to tape it up and move on to the next step. All right, so we gotta go to number 3 since number 2 is done. So green wire is connected at the door lock unlock switch part. So on number 3, he basically asks us to connect the battery and turn on ignition, and then we're gonna click the unlock twice, and here if the relays are reacting to what we are, you know, sending the signal for it. And in the end, he's saying basically that you will see that LED will click 2 times with a pause and 4 times with a pause. So basically it'll click 2 times pause, 4 times pause, 2 times pause, 4 times pause, which will indicate that there is still no connection between the module and the window motors, which is correct because we have not connected that part yet. So stay tuned to see what's gonna take place here next. I'm gonna lay this guy down and record the unlock twice. So I'm heading to the car. I'm gonna turn on the ignition and click unlock button twice. I'm pressing unlock. And what I see is we got 1, 2, 3, 4. Pause. So 1, 2, pause. 1, 2, 3, 4. And I think I want to say I heard the relays clicking, so we're all good. On to the next step, to splice in the actual motor connections. All right, so we've tested. We got the LEDs blinking as they should. Everything is good. So next thing is to splice the 4 wires from the connector that will go into the module, and then from this side that you're gonna cut out, you're gonna put them on this side. And we obviously gonna go per the directions. All these wires are coming out of S21, which is this first connector here. And you're gonna take LE minus plus, RE minus plus, RM, LM. So this side is the motor side, this is the ECU side. So we're gonna connect that one at a time, or whichever way it's gonna go, and go from there. The one difficulty that I see so far is, you know, having not enough wire maybe to do it. I mean, it's like very, very gonna be tight. But we'll see what we can do, and I'll follow up obviously when I'm done. All right, final stretch. So what I found best to do, this is strictly my opinion, other installers can take on this job as they wish. So I cut these longer to be able to connect to the module, because I'm gonna just Velcro it down here. And then I extended the leads here. Now you make sure that if you're using same color wiring all across, you make sure that you're not connecting the wrong ways, otherwise the motors won't work right. You just gotta make sure that the positive and negatives line up on the motor side and on the switch side or the plug side. I already closed up the controller, this little opening, that's where the LED will be blinking through in case you need to do any diagnostics. Put some lume over it and tidy this up, and almost ready to give it a try. So as someone who does electrical installations like this on vehicles of various sorts of radios and solar, you know, RV campers, trailers, off-road overland vehicle stuff that I do in my shop, installation like this, now that I have done it, and granted this has taken me almost better part of the day now because I'm recording and, you know, I'm trying to figure out best ways to present this information, if you want to put it that way, for the viewers, so this way whenever anybody's doing similar install, they'll know what to do already. So I'm kind of breaking the trail, so to speak, right? But in any case, like if you were to come to me and be like, hey dude, could you install this for me, I wouldn't touch this job probably for less than $350. That's at least, you know, my rate, because now that I know what needs to take place, that's what I would charge. Now, depending on how other shops might consider doing this, I mean, if you find somebody who does it on the cheap, make sure that they do a good job, at least if they're doing it cheap. I mean, if you got a buddy who's you know, willing to do it for a 6-pack of beer and knows what he's doing, more blessings to you. Any proper wiring guy that values his time and does due diligence, slow quality work, and we're not talking about slow like, you know, like he doesn't know what he's doing, but slow as in taking his time, diligently doing all the connections, because you do not want to have to come back to this, or you do not want to have to worry about any windows opening up or closing on you when they shouldn't be, vice versa, you know. So to make sure that this job gets done, like I would say this is probably 3 to 4 hour job for starters. Somebody who does it all the time, obviously they could probably get down better, whatever, but I am joining this a little bit with my rear camera wiring, so this is taking me a little bit longer, obviously, for some side things. But overall, you know, be expected to either do a lot of your own work or expect to pay a shop and figure out how things are done the right way. But overall, on scale of 1 through 10, this installation, I mean, gosh, you really just cutting and, you know, connecting 4 wires, and then you're connecting or splicing 4 more. I mean, technically you're not doing a whole lot, and instructions are all there, diagram is all there. So this should be not a long one, unless somebody is, you know, really fast of ripping door panels out and running wires through whatever, fishing the way, wherever they do it. Now, I don't want to get all, you know, overly talking too much. Without further ado, I'm gonna basically put on the last loom and put the camera on the tripod and give this a try and see how this will work. Shout out to SC430 community. I want to do a follow-up on this module that can be added, that I ordered a few sets from a gentleman in Russia that makes them. So by using the unlock button here, you're able to control your rear windows. So 3 clicks, unlock. 1, 2, 3 will lower the windows. And then if you click twice, unlock. 1, 2, it will bring them up. Welcome back to the channel. Continuing the video. I'm not sure if I'm gonna break it up into 2 parts, but we might just keep it 1 part. So what we're doing here, along with the module for the rear glass quarter windows on this SC430, we also running a rear backup camera wire harness, whatever you want to call it. What I'm doing, basically, I'm going to recoup real quick. So install the camera here. You can do one that's license plate, you can do one that's, you know, tapped and drilled, whatever. So I just drilled an opening right here, and my camera was in there, and then the nuts on top there, nice and snug, and it's kind of out of the way, nice and clean, right? So anyway, it's very simple to do it. You will have to drill an opening right here on one of the sides, and if you actually remove the license plate, it will make simpler to see where to drill the openings. But you drill the opening, put a rubber grommet in there, make sure the water does not come in through here. So this way you get your cabling, your wiring for the camera inside the trunk space. So the goal is to have a ignition power and a ground obviously go into it, right? Camera needs power to run, but then camera needs to do somewhere a trigger, this wire here. So on the camera cable here, I have the trigger wire that's connected to the reverse, so it activates the reverse switch or whatever option. So basically, when you put your car in reverse, the camera will turn on. And then the way we do that is in this trunk space harness area, you will find this fuse panel under all the plastics, whatever, and you find in this red wire right here, I'm gonna click it back in, this red. So there's only 3 wire in this little plug, white, green, and red. The red is the trigger for your reverse. So basically, when you turn reverse on, this wire has power to it. So keep that in mind. This is not a ground, this is not a negative side of connection, because you have 2 ways in most cases that cameras will be triggered to turn on for the reverse, either a negative polarity or a positive polarity. In our case, in the Pioneer, when you do the backup camera options, it has an option for battery or ground. In our case, you need to have what is called battery selected, because it's going to be feeding off of a positive feed, if that makes sense. So those who install understand. If you don't install, don't know this stuff, go to someone who does and they'll take care of it for you. Reverse signal input. In my case, it's a purple with 2 white stripes in it. This is back of the Pioneer head unit. Plug in. So this is where we're gonna connect the trigger wire that's going to come on from there. And that's what I've done here. You will see is basically we have, where's the dongle? So I spliced that in because that's the signal that goes in to activate things. And we're gonna splice that, and this is the wire, this blue wire that I've added is gonna run along there. So the way we're gonna route it is gonna go from here, camera gonna go through with the harnesses here under there. It's gonna get tapped into there. We're gonna use ignition from this connector here because it's already a known connection. So this purple white, that's your ignition on this connector here. So we're gonna tap into this. This is, I already pre-did this for myself, right? And then we're gonna tap. So this is gonna go to the power and ground side of the camera. Like in my case, my camera has the video cable feed and then the positive and the negative. So this, I guess you could consider this like a constant hot. And then the blue wire that I've connected that runs and connects into this one by the video plug. This is your ignition / reverse trigger. So this one will be turned on only. It will send a signal only when the car is in reverse. So let's get that going. So again, route it this way, and then we're gonna drop in behind the seat. And then we're just gonna come right in the middle on the center console here, armrest, and right in the camera compartment. Very short run.